and I had pumpkin spice coffee this morning and fried apples. So I'm into the fall season. Today we're going to continue in our learning from Philippians, and we're going to be in chapter 4 today. I'm going to read the first 3 verses to us. And as I do this, I want to remind us that the last thing that Paul said in chapter 3 was that we who are believers have a citizenship in heaven. And Christ is going to transform our lowly bodies into a glorious body. And so Paul begins chapter 4 with the word therefore. Because this is true, there are consequences. There are things that should be happening in our lives that are a result of this transformation that God is doing for us and in us. And so therefore, because we're going to put on a glorious body by the power of Christ, my beloved brethren, whom I long to see, my joy and crown, so stand firm in the Lord, my beloved. I urge Euodia and I urge Syntyche to live in harmony in the Lord. Indeed, a true comrade, I ask you also to help these women who have shared my struggle in the cause of the gospel, together with Clement also, and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. And so Paul says that because we understand that we are heirs, we are citizens, we are a part of a new kingdom that is not of this world, we should stand firm, not allowing the kingdom of this world to interfere with our residence in the next. And that stand firm is something that is an encouragement for us, not just to rely on what we've done in the past, but to stand and keep standing. Just continue to do it each and every day. And Paul uses that verbiage consistently in the Philippian church. Now, we're going to talk about an interesting thought for me as a pastor anyway. In Philippians, this is a good church. You know, this is a church that our pastors would say, send me there, send me there. And so there's not a lot of conflict. There is some, because there's always some conflict, but there's always a way to resolve conflict. And this is one of those passages, one of those things that happen where even at a good church, there are people who are disagreeing with each other as to how to proceed, what process to use, what's true and false. There's something that's bringing some folks into conflict with one another. This is not a good church. So that's a truth for us to really to absorb. And so, you know, when there's more than one person involved, there's always going to be a bunch of opinions. And opinions should not separate people. And Paul says, you know, they disagree. These two ladies, Euodia and Syntyche, they disagree with each other, but they should be able to live in harmony. And that is a powerful thought for the church, that we may be disagreeing with one another, but we should be able to live in harmony. The question is, and here's the fundamental question, and Paul answers this, it depends on what we're disagreeing on. You know, I tell couples when we're going through premarital counseling that really 90% of the things that we disagree about are really, maybe even more than that, are really not all that big a deal. And it's like water off the back of a duck. We should just, you know, not even worry about it. Not be dramatic about every disagreement that we have with one another. Not allow it to separate us as brothers and sisters in the Lord. Most disagreements, they're just really not that relevant. But there are some few. So when a disagreement is about a core belief, something fundamental, Paul takes a different view. And he even, in some passages, he says, he turns them over to Satan. And here in the Philippian church, you remember that Paul said, you know, if if it's a core belief that you're disagreeing with me on, one day he's praying that one day God will bring you to your senses. Uh, there are certain core things that church people just really can't disagree about. That becomes a bad witness to the community and to their own soul. And so right now, Paul's urging these two to get along with each other, be in ministry together. And he even mentions a third one, Clement. So there's obviously a group. There's obviously some folks who are upset about something. And he's urging them to be in harmony with the mission of the church, even though they are in disagreement. And that's really good advice for most people who are in disagreement within the body of their church, or within disagreement with their pastor or their church leadership, or even the denomination. But most of the time, we just need to say, you know what, we just need to live in harmony and work on mission for bringing people into a relationship with Christ. Until we realize this is a core fundamental belief. There are certain things that have to be worked out in a marriage. We have to have a conversation if someone's feeling dishonored or disrespected. That's not a small thing. That's a significant thing. And so here, I don't know if it's a small thing or a significant thing, but I do know that Paul's saying, get over it. So that would tell me that it's a small thing that they're arguing about. And what happens, and we realize this in our lives, sometimes because of things that are going on at home, a small thing in my life in the church becomes a big thing. Because if people can't resolve the things that are happening in their intimate relationships at home, and they don't know a way to resolve those things, there's conflict at home, there's something happening, there's some drama at home, then a smaller thing, either at work or at the church, becomes a big thing. And when it doesn't need to. What really needs to happen is there really needs to be some love given to one another so that we can help with whatever's going on at home, and be there as a resource for our brothers and sisters who need help in their personal lives. And so most conflict for me in my life, most conflict is simply a sign. It's like a flag saying, you need to look at my family. You need to look at me. Something's going on in my life that I need some help with. Now, I will say that most of the time when I took Paul's advice here and tried to help people to live in harmony with one another and with the church, when there was some kind of drama going on and I tried to help, it really didn't work out. And most of the time I ended up being the bad guy. That doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to try to work it out. I wouldn't be surprised if Clement left the church. It wouldn't surprise me at all because of something that's going on in his life. He's got some kind of drama. Something's happening. And the reason I say that so is because the Spirit of Christ is one. And people who want to listen and follow after Christ, they find a way to live in harmony. Even when they are in disagreement, they find a way to do it. It's only when someone is out of step with the Holy Spirit that that drama becomes so deep and so rooted that people's answer is the only thing they can think to do is I got to get away from here. And it's like going around a circle, feeling like you're not getting anywhere, you're not growing anything, nothing's happening, and I'm not learning anything, I'm not growing, I'm not doing, and boom, done. When none of that is probably true. What's generally true in most people's lives is the Holy Spirit is working on them and trying to help them to grow in faith and trying to help them to resolve if there's something at home or something at work, trying to help them to resolve how it is that they're supposed to be a Christian with their spouse or with their children or with their workmates. And they don't want to face it because to face it, a lot of times the Holy Spirit is saying, the problem really isn't everybody else. I know that you think there's a lot of people who are thinking ill of you, uh, or people that you're thinking ill of. And the problem generally is we need to change something about our behavior or our own attitudes. And he's going to talk about attitude in just a second. And that's how I know that that's what this is about. Uh, he's going to talk about attitude in just a second. And the reason that we're in disharmony with people a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, it's our own attitude. And Paul says, if you could just figure out how to center your attitude in a new and different way, you might realize that a lot of the friction that you have in relationships with other people really centers on you. And so Paul is trying to help the leader, likely Lydia. He's trying to help Lydia and encourage her, help these people to understand that they can live in harmony with different opinions, and that not everything has to be drama. And you don't have to walk into a situation and always be dramatic. I have a really small example of this that I've learned in my life, and it goes all the way back to my graduate school days at Virginia Tech and at Princeton. I learned that like if we were going to have an oral conversation and I was going to be the presenter, I had an idea that I was going to present. One of the things I learned about groups and about people is as soon as a person is designated like the point person, there are going to be people in the room who automatically, it doesn't matter, like if I'm the point person, it's not going to matter what I say. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a good idea. It doesn't matter if it's an awesome idea. It really is not going to matter, because the very first thing that they do, even before they sit down, as a part of their personality and their attitude, the first word that comes out of my mouth, they are thinking of what they can say to rebut the idea. And I call it the yeah but syndrome. And I've proven this. I would go in consistently, and I would know who was going to say what within a group. Not only at the university where I studied, but in church life. It didn't matter what the thought was. Certain people were consistently sitting there thinking about what they were going to say as a challenge or a rebuttal to what I was saying. Didn't matter what I was saying. I could be saying it was Tuesday. Doesn't matter. But that's what I'm trying to help us to see, is that if we have that kind of attitude, if we're not really listening, if we're entering situations and we always seem to have some kind of relationship drama surrounding us, there's always someone that we're at odds with, there's a really good chance that I need to look at myself and re-examine my attitude. Paul is telling Lydia, help these people do this. Help them to understand that not everything is the end of the world, and not everything has to be so dramatic in life that you push it all the way to the edge of the cliff and box yourself in on that edge of the cliff. And when you turn around, you realize all I have left to do is jump off. You don't need to put yourself in that kind of situation. And so Paul says, and he's going to teach us how to retrain our attitude. That's what chapter 4 is about. It's about retraining your attitude to be more helpful for the kingdom. If you're the person at the church who's sitting in a meeting, whatever church you go to, and you're thinking about how to rebut whatever anybody's saying, and that's pretty consistently, like that's your piece in the play. That's the part that you play. If that's consistently you, that's a problem. That's a problem for you. I mean, sure, it's a problem for the leadership and it's a problem for the pastor, but it's really a problem for you. And we need to think about more likely how can we find things that make us live in harmony. And generally that takes some really strong self-examination and a decision to change our attitudes. Next week we're going to talk about this next verse, and chapter 4 is one of my favorite chapters. 3 and 4 in Philippians, they're just awesome. Chapter 4 is, and you'll know why. There's like 5 life verses in this chapter. And next week we're going to talk about the first one, which is an attitude adjustment. He says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." Again, I say rejoice, and that's a decision to live in harmony, not only with God, but with the people around you. And so I want to encourage you, stay with this through the end of chapter 4 and learn the great truth that Paul gives us about making attitudinal adjustments in our lives and not constantly being the person sitting in the room saying, yeah, but what about this? And yeah, but what about that? And you didn't think about this. And what about this? And how come this? And why are you that? And so said, and then they said, and we really don't need to live like that. And so, how would you like to be? Think about this. How would you like to be, Yoda, Synecdoche, or Clement? And your permanent legacy in this world is to be in this letter under these circumstances. How would you like to be remembered as the drama queen of the church? Seriously. I don't think any of us want that. The first thing we have to do is just be aware of the reality of what's around us. We don't have to create these things. We don't have to make up problems. There's plenty of real problems around. And so the work of the church is to figure out how to be light and hope in the midst of everybody else's drama, not to be drama for everyone else. And so I want to encourage you to this day kind of evaluate your own self within your family, within your relationship with the people that you're closest to, at your work environment, at your church where you serve and where you go. Do you love your church? Do you encourage your church? Do you lift up your church? Or you're constantly looking for issues and problems and just looking for something to complain about? Just evaluate yourself and begin to make an attitudinal adjustment. And that means the way you do that, the first thing you need to do is just be aware of yourself. Watch the words that are coming out of your mouth. Are you sitting in a Bible study waiting to say what you want to say rather than listening to what other people are saying to you? And that's important. That's an important adjustment for us to make. And so I want to just encourage you in your life, learn to have a good attitude and enjoy your day. I'm thanking you for coming today. And I hope and I pray God's richest blessing on you on this lovely Tuesday and this movement into November. And eventually we're probably going to change our clocks, right? I think that's probably coming. But God bless you.